Hi.
Hello. Hi, Amy.
Hey there.
Hi, Ryan. You're the first people I see.
You're on.
Hi, Christine.
Hello.
Is Antonia here? I think she's the one that invited me.
She did. I'm stepping in front of Tony tonight because I think last week, she broke her hand pretty badly today and had to, or not today, but broke her hand last week and had to have surgery today to repair it.
Oh my goodness. That sounds awful.
Yeah. It did sound a little bit gnarly, I must say, the description of what happened.
Okay.
Like she got her hand caught in the railing on the way down some stairs. Yeah, sounds pretty unpleasant.
Okay.
Just wait a few minutes to see someone else shows up. Amy,
Sure.
how are you?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. You can.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Do you guys do most of your meetings now on Zoom?
I don't want to go upstairs.
Yeah. I've never been to a non-Zoom meeting for PTA yet. But
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, I've definitely been in the gymnasium and the Grout quite a few times. So
yeah.
it does make it sort of easy in some ways to do things like this, for some people, it's like makes it easier to participate, but I do sort of miss in-person stuff too.
Definitely. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. I think, some people noted in particular because there's teachers on our board. And so, if they've gone home from work, need to come back to work late at night, and some of them live further away. So it's going to be better for that purpose.
In the before times, the Grout PTA used to be quite well attended, actually, I recall.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's good. So, all right. Maybe I'll just give it one more minute to see folks trickle in. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. As folks know, Antonia is recovering from a surgery this evening, and so I am just going to facilitate this evening's meeting. Hopefully you can all see some slides. You can give me a nasty face if you can't see them. All right, so I'm gonna do just a few updates, and then Amy is here, who's gonna give a little presentation for us, just for the Eco School Network, and then we're gonna talk with our representative, which is gonna be great. So let's do that. All right. So I don't know if I'm gonna get them. I dropped them when I signed on, but I put the minutes in the chat, just in case people haven't taken the time this last week to go through them thoroughly before this meeting. If you are before last meeting, you can look at those. If people don't see them, will you let me know? And I can put them back in the chat as well. But maybe we can approve those minutes at the end of the meeting rather than now, so people get a chance to take a look. And Tony wanted everyone to know that all the Grout store merchandise orders have either been picked up or delivered to your student to bring home. If you have not seen your order, please contact her at groutpta@gmail.com. There are a few committee chairs needed for next year. Garden Club, Communications Secretary, and Dine Out Coordinator. Does anyone want to speak to any of those who's in one of those current positions or who maybe has occupied in the past or knows a little bit more about any of them? You want to give your 1 30-second elevator speech?
I'll go ahead. I'm the current secretary and dine out coordinator, and Brianna Smith, by the way. Thanks for having me. I just secretary is it's been a pretty fun position in that you're there at the meetings, you take notes. It's pretty relaxed, pretty simple, and it's nice to know what's going on and kind of keep track of that. The dine out coordinator position is similarly a pretty it's not a huge time commitment. It's contacting local restaurants and cafes and helping to organize the dine outs, which have been a key way that Grout PTA has earned money during this time when we can't have gatherings. So yeah, if there's anybody that's interested in either one, please let Antonia know or me, and we'll kind of start training you. Thanks.
Great. And I'm sure Brianna says the dine outs for Grout have been pretty successful and are an important part of our funding. So you know, filling that role would be awesome.
Absolutely. And
Cool.
if somebody doesn't step up, I will continue doing it, but it'd be great to have somebody to kind of shadow me to take over.
Great. Thanks, Brianna. Does anyone want to speak to any? Oops, sorry, I advanced the slides there. I will add those notes back in. Thanks, Zoom user, to everyone for putting that in the chat. Does anyone want to speak to any of the other positions? Sorry, let me go back. There we go. Garden club or communications? Okay, let's see if those folks show up later. All right. Okay, so just a couple projects that we're working on. Teacher appreciation. Kim, I believe you're working on that. Is that right, Kim?
Yeah, I am. And I just wanted to touch base with someone from the school to make sure it seemed like a good idea. And I saw teacher Charisse the other day, and she said that would be great. The teachers would love it. And I was wondering if that no school day, if the teachers and some staff would be there, because I thought that would be a nice day to bring in the coffee and donuts without kids, so they could really just drink some coffee and have donuts and enjoy it. So I'll check on that. And if that day works, I think it will be the 31st.
Sweet.
Does anyone, I can do more details later, but does anyone know if Sesame Donuts or a donut in the area that has gluten-free? That was a concern.
I think Sesame Donuts has gluten-free, Kim.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Awesome. So as folks know, we have a muddy playground. And I am going to work with whoever would like to help to at least partially remedy that by maybe looking into adding some new wood chips. My vision for that is simply that rent a U-Haul trailer attached to the back of my Subaru, go pick up some wood chips, and then somebody with needs some help with a couple probably heavy metal rakes and an hour or so, I'm guessing, to rake those out, depending on how many of us are, and how close we can get them to the location. As I found out a few summers ago when I bought a whole ton of dirt to fill garden boxes, but couldn't get them anywhere near where I need them to be. And that took days, so we're not gonna do that. But if anybody wants to help out with that or has ideas about best places for chips or how to facilitate, that'd be awesome. I think probably do need to check with the school as well about getting a vehicle close to the location, since driving down the steps is probably not a great idea for my car. So I need a gate open. So, but if anyone is interested, shoot me an email and we'll try to arrange a call later this week about that. Okay.
Ryan,
Cool.
can I just
Yes.
say, with
Yeah.
driving in, like the grass is super muddy and the
Yeah.
track is super muddy, so that just might something
Yeah.
to consider.
Yeah, we don't want to dig holes in that either during this time of the year. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a catch-22, aren't we? So anyway, we'll have to figure that out. And maybe I have another theory about how this could work out as well. Maybe with a big tarp and dragging them will be not too difficult. So, but any other ideas? Anyone own a backhoe? Let us know. That'd be great. Okay. So that's all for president updates. There is a membership and a store that you can go to if you'd like to become a member or donate. There at the top, you can connect us to Constella if you want to get update. If you haven't yet, you can download that to your digital calendar, and all the updates will be there for available. And then there's a few other ways to contact us. All right, Amy, sorry to keep you waiting, but
No
Amy
worries.
Higgs is here, Executive Director of the Eco School Network, to talk about their program. Go ahead,
Hey,
Amy.
everyone. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. So yeah, if you haven't heard of Eco School Network, we're a community of parents in the metro area that help schools become greener and healthier. Right now, our registration is open for our online training this winter that prepares parents to meet a need in your kid's school by carrying out a passion project that also gets students involved in sustainability. So whether you're concerned about the climate crisis or you want kids to have more time out in nature or opportunities to practice sustainability or learn how to take action in their own community, this is an online training that basically helps you choose a project you care about that meets a real need here at Grout. And so you can either do the project on your own or with a partner or a small team. And Grout actually has a long history of Eco School Network projects that we've supported. Erica Keeley, your garden chair right now, is an Eco School Network parent leader. And looking at the list of projects, it looks like you all have, we've supported your veggie garden, food waste collection and composting, walk and bike to school campaigns, durable silverware switching from plastic silverware, and creation of an adult green team in past years. And I know some of those initiatives are continuing and others maybe could use a little restart. So those are just some examples of projects, but they can be big or small. This year, we're really focusing on projects that are necessary. There are so many real needs in schools right now, and projects that don't add to any staff responsibilities, especially this year. Our training is a series of 4 live webinars, and you do it with a cohort of parents from other schools. We are offering the training for free this year to the first people who sign up, and there's no cost just for ongoing support to the school as well. It runs from mid-February through March, and you also get to have a personal mentor who will make sure that you have the support and tools that you need to be successful for collaborating. And then after the training is done, you can either just be done or you can join our network of parents from other schools. Right now we work with about 77 schools and 40,000 students in the area. And when you're in the network, you get invitations to our quarterly meetings, gatherings and retreats. And it's just an awesome, really inspiring group of people who are very full of hope and positive energy. So it's a great group to be part of. If you would like to learn about the training, we have a couple info sessions coming up on January 27th and February 1st at 7 p.m. And if you'd like to save your spot at an info session, just jot your name and email into the chat box, and I will send you the link, the detail. If you're not comfortable sharing your contact info there, I will add the link to the training website and my email address so that you can reach out to me instead. But yeah, sometimes like just one person taking this training can end up really building momentum in a school and leading to years of other projects by others that end up engaging hundreds of students every day in sustainability. So we would love to keep supporting your school, and thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Amy. Hey, Amy, do you have there could be some people who might be interested or not here tonight, and maybe you've already communicated with Erica. Is there some written material we might post to the Constella or send out that other folks could consult if they weren't here?
Absolutely, yeah. I have a flyer that I will link to, and I'll link to the primary website. I also have a short Facebook link that I could send. I don't know if you have a PTA Facebook page.
Yep, we do.
Should I email those to you, Ryan, or to Antonia?
Antonia, I think so. Here, I'll put that email back up here. Oops. Oop. So it's just the groutpta@gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Cool.
Thanks so much. I'll hang out for a couple minutes while I add my stuff into the chat, and then
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks so much. All right. Thanks to Representative Nosse for being here today. As folks know, he represents the 42nd district, which is a combination of Southeast Portland and Northeast Portland, and has been in the legislature since 2014. I believe last time you were in the Joint Ways and Means Committee, as well as still am, okay. As well as the health and behavioral health.
Yep, I'm the vice chair of that committee, and sticking with that committee as well.
Okay, awesome. So maybe I'm sure folks have some questions. But
yeah, do you want to, if you can, I can put up a few slides that just sort of gives a high level overview of like what I think is coming in February for the session.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we can just do, okay.
Let me see if I can.
Do you have to like share?
Yes, I'm sure.
All right.
Does anybody know? Someone,
I think you go to like click on me and you make a host or allow.
I see. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Let's do that. Maybe try now.
Okay, let's see. Yep, totally worked.
Perfect.
Okay. Do you see a cluttered laptop?
Indeed.
Okay, hang on a second here. Let me see if I can unclutter it a little. View. Didn't work. Come on. There we go. From the beginning. Okay. All right. I'm going to speed to some of that. Okay. So now when I do this, I've got a box of people. Can you just, do you see the box of people too, or do you see my screen? Are words covered up?
No,
just your screen.
Okay. I think if I put myself, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right. So if you haven't lived in Oregon very long, you may or may not know that we're not a full-time legislature. We have a long session in the odd numbered years that starts at the end of January and goes to the end of June. And then we started in 2020, this thing that we call the short session, not 2020, excuse me, 2010. And that is a 5-week session that we put in the Constitution so that the legislature would have an opportunity to come in, check in on budgets, make fixes to bills that we passed in the long session where maybe there was an unintended consequence, and then have some opportunity to actually check in on the executive branch. I think we felt like as the legislature, we weren't monitoring what the governor and the agencies were doing as well as we could. And so that's why we created, with the blessing of the voters of Oregon, this short session approach. So we'll start legislating in February and we expect to end around March 4th. If you followed the legislature a little bit 2 years ago, there was a big Republican walkout over a climate change bill in 2020. So we're hopeful that there will not be a Republican walkout for this time. Most governing bodies, legislatures in the United States, have a thing called quorum. It's a rule about how many people have to be present before the body can conduct business and take a vote on something. Most state legislatures in the United States just require a simple majority. So in my chamber, there's 60 members of the House. That would be 31. But because we have a super majority requirement for quorum before business can be conducted, that means 40 people have to be present on the floor of the House before any voting can occur. And while Democrats have a majority in this state, we don't have a super majority. We're 37, not 40. And so if the Republicans really hate something that Democrats are up to, they can band together and walk off the job and deny us the ability to vote. Now, there are things in the works across the state to try to remedy that, but nothing on the horizon just yet. So that's a little bit about the short session and how it works. The bills that I expect. So I kind of alluded to that, normally we don't focus on, well, not normally, we have focused on a controversy or a big topic every short session that I've served, and I've been in the legislature since 2014. So here are the things that I think are coming up that I know. Some of these are quite controversial. So we're going to take up a discussion about, can we send essential workers who weren't able to quarantine, who had to go to work and face the public, some sort of bonus? Think about your bus drivers, your folks that work in grocery stores. We continue to work on bills around criminal justice reform. So a bill that did not pass in the long session of 2021 around making a traffic stop less likely to create an interaction with law enforcement and a passenger or a driver that could lead to unintended consequences. We're going back at that. There's a big bill coming around agricultural worker overtime. Agriculture is one of the few jobs, working agriculture in the United States, that does not pay overtime over 40 hours a week. And so it's up to each state to legislate that. And most folks feel like this is a vestige of the South and racism from the 1930s and 40s, when we didn't include this in the labor standards that we have. So we are attempting to work on that. Universal representation is the pet phrase for trying to make it so that if you need an immigration lawyer, the state would be able to help you with that. We continue to work on trying to get more childcare available in this state and make that profession, those jobs, frankly, more financially rewarding so that we can attract people to do that work. There is a pretty big privately owned forestry accord that is ready to come and be voted on. The governor has been working with private forest landowners, and environmental organizations for the last couple of years to try to get Oregon's longstanding timber wars to kind of come to an end and figure out how we can have a sustainable industry, but still protect watersheds and animal life and have old growth and opportunities for recreation. So that's coming to us. We continue to have challenges with healthcare workforce staffing due to the pandemic. And so we'll be looking at that topic. We want to talk about racism as a public health crisis, provide cancer coverage for firefighters under certain conditions, create access to air conditioners. Right now, believe it or not, landlords have the ability to deny an apartment dweller the ability to install an air conditioner. So we're trying to figure that out. Obviously, dealing with climate change and the big heat dome that we had last year, that's really brought that. I think I kind of already mentioned police reform follow-ups. We'll be updating budgets. We budget on a 2-year cycle in the state of Oregon. And so our budget started on July 1 of 2021 and goes to June 30 of 2023. We do a 2-year budget, but we'll use this opportunity to check in and make adjustments. And then we'll fix bills that were passed in the 21 session that maybe had some unintended consequences. So those are the things that I think are coming. I've got a bill that I'm working on to try to improve the compensation for naturopathic physicians. And so each legislator only gets 2 bills in the session. So that's why I'm highlighting this. And then I'll have another bill that I'm working on to try to get some coronavirus relief for arts and culture and entertainment venues. Most of these organizations have struggled during the pandemic because they can't sell as many tickets, or they're just not outright having performances or concerts or events. And so we want to try to provide them a little bit of financial assistance so they can keep their lights on and keep a modicum of staffing and keep the building in good shape and be there once we don't have a pandemic anymore and we can start to have entertainment events again in person. And then this isn't my bill, but it's a committee bill, but I'm very involved in it. We're having a lot of workforce challenges in this state. You probably hear about them from your principal in terms of things that are going on with education. In my space, where I'm very active with behavioral health, we're having workforce challenges trying to attract people to do mental health and behavioral health work in this state and then stay in those jobs if they're currently working. So we're going to try to come up with some sort of basically a grant that we can send to employers that do mental health and behavioral health work to allow them to give a bonus or a childcare subsidy or raise wages to be able to attract and retain the workforce that they have. And I think that's it. Yeah, we'll just sort of, I can stop sharing. Yeah, and maybe we're small enough. I don't know, Ryan, if you just want to let people shout out their questions or try to raise their hand.
Either way, but if there's multiple people, I'll try to note people's names in order in which they raise their hand. Otherwise, folks just want to jump in with a question, they should do so.
You can ask me whatever's on your mind. I tried to just give a high level overview to give you some sense of what's coming.
So this was a question. Christine, I think actually you asked this question in the email. Did you want to raise it?
Yeah, Representative, I'm just curious if, you're hearing of any bills that might be coming up around education funding this session and.
No, I have not. We'll probably check in on the education budgets, but I'm not aware of any bills to sort of enhance education funding. We did a big Student Success Act in 2019, where we passed a very large gross receipts tax on businesses to try to raise $1 billion a year for schools. And so I'm not, that has not sort of panned out the way that we thought it would because of the pandemic. But it is coming into existence and it is raising revenue, just maybe not quite as much as we thought it was going to. But as the pandemic, waxes and wanes, I guess is about the best way to say it right now. As that sort of happens, we expect that the financial resources we planned to come from that tax increase will start to show up. So
Okay.
we're hearing a lot from teachers and from education staff about just the challenges of working and dealing with the virus and all that sort of stuff, but there's not any funding things that I'm aware of that are coming. I didn't put this on the slide, but there's definitely going to be some legislation about protecting superintendents from unintended consequences. Like you can't fire a school superintendent if they're enforcing a mask mandate as required by is issued by the governor or the Oregon Health Authority. So that's not a thing so much in our area of the world, but it is definitely in other parts of the state to try to, have some standards around. We haven't had to have that before in statute. We've just relied on school boards to sort of do the right thing, but it's been kind of tricky out there in some of the other districts, and especially with everything that's going on in Newburgh and Albany. So that's a thing that we're likely to see in the education space, as long as also probably requiring that some school board, that all school boards get training on budgeting and state ethics laws and some of that stuff.
Thanks. I see a hand. I don't see a name. So if you have your hand up,
You should Zoom user.
Yeah.
And then, okay. Oh, Chris Pitts did a thumbs. Okay. That's not a hand. Hi.
Hello, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
have my iPad, so it's hard for me to reset my name. I'm Kamala Wymore. I'm just curious, just to piggyback on the education question. I know there's CARES Act funds coming through, and a lot of schools and districts haven't spent that money yet, and there's a big deadline coming up. Do you know much about that the CARES Act funding?
I do not. We've been told that the money that we have at the state level for CARES Act is not going to be required to be, I guess for the lack of a better word, returned.
Okay.
We're permitted to sort of keep that funding. And so I assume that will be the same for the school districts. When that money showed up in the spring of 2021, the state ended up with, like, by the time we got our share, the counties got their share, the cities got their share, the universities got their share, the school districts got their share. Something like over $6 billion of financial assistance came into our state.
Interesting. Wow. That's a
So
lot.
if the best way to get some sort of sense of like what's going on with the funding for that would be maybe to check with your principal or get a member of the school board to come to one of these.
Okay, thank you.
If other people have questions, please jump in. But one concern that I just wanted to share about kind of COVID response in schools is, I think we've done a good job, I think overall, of making vaccines available to folks. There's definitely particular communities that we could do better outreach and targeting to,
Sure.
and some that's happening. I think we've done a pretty good job of of now in our school, at least, we have like testing available every week for students as a public health measure. But the couple of things that concern me still is and we've seen some movement at the federal level this week, but it's still obviously going to be a ways out, which is one is making sure like everybody has the best possible mask available to
Yes,
them.
right.
I just think that's like just been a failure of government. And I realize this is a federal failure as much as anything, but is, it's like, N95, KN95, KN94 should just like every student and teacher should have those available. Nobody should have to show up with a cloth mask anymore if they don't want to. And the other thing is, I think it's just ventilation and air quality. I mean, more and more those seem to be just like crucial components of
Sure.
addressing the issues. And the ventilation systems in schools and even in classrooms is having HEPA filters available and operative. It seems to be like another effective measure.
His PPS, we were under the impression that a lot of the districts were sort of investing in some of that stuff, or that PPS was going to try to. I know we have a lot of old buildings.
I don't know. And I know there's
exactly a new one.
No, for sure. And I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that front. So you're right. I mean, that probably just made my information just be better updated. If someone does on this call knows, please jump in. There has been, go ahead. It's okay. Jamie,
I mean, they've put air filters in every
air
room.
filters. Yeah.
Big things throughout
Yeah.
the district. But,
yeah. Which I
and
think
there's
is
windows to open. That's about it. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that backs having the air filters as a mitigating factor for the aerosol spread.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that I just say air quality more generally. I mean, I don't know how the air quality is like at school, but air quality is more. I mean, more research all the time showing like how big of an impact air quality has on like learning and just development.
Absolutely.
And just general health. And so, I just think that those are like concern. Like, I think like. Okay, vaccines. I mean, sometimes I think is amazing, to be quite honest. And then given what we would expect, and then like some of these other things, it just seems like we didn't quite make it on those as much. And there are filters I know in the rooms to a certain extent. They're on. Some of them disrupt learning because they're very loud, but that is what it is. There are trade-offs. But anyway, some of these other things, I think, especially the ventilation and the air quality, is just a concern that I continue to have, and I have never seen it sort of really clearly addressed. Like here's what, and those are big physical, costly infrastructure purchases, especially if we're talking about HVAC systems or what have you.
Sure.
So, anyway, just a concern I have about this, and making it. And I think, especially in light of the both reasonable and ongoing reasonable and worries that staff and students and parents, but also teachers in particular have about they're staying in school, and like are we doing everything possible to make it as safe as possible, given that there's a certain level of risk that just cannot be avoided.
I know we had a ton of debate in the summer about 6 feet, 3 feet, people have to wear masks, and it seems like we got through that. And I have heard in the news, this is where my kids are out of high school, about going on 4 years now. So I'm a little out of the loop sometimes about some of the things that go on in the classroom, but I know high schools periodically have had to close due to COVID outbreaks. I haven't heard too much in elementary schools and middle schools. Has your school been able to stay open the whole time?
So far.
So far, yeah. And the numbers continue to increase, but yeah, so far.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're quite at our peak yet. I swear that the OHSU modeling that we were sort of told about says it doesn't really peak till about February.
Yeah.
Yep. But like, I mean, I think today in the newspaper, it was something like 28,000 cases. And it was like, I was like, I haven't seen numbers like that, the entire time of the pandemic.
That's since Friday, that number.
Yeah. The charts I've seen that's sort of like that the health authority makes available to policymakers, like you see this sort of like, little blips here and there, and then just for like the last couple of months, it's just like, it's like an L. In terms of straight up in the number of cases, but we're not hearing that our hospitals are overwhelmed, but we do hear quite a lot that hospital workers are quite burned out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to say, even at our school, yes, we're keeping it open, but often, there is no library because the librarian is covering for a teacher.
Yes.
And that means, that all the other teachers that would have library that day don't get that break. And, I think they're holding on. But, there has to be a tipping point at some point. We're not quite there yet. I know there's a lot of other schools that don't even necessarily have the right qualified staff in the correct positions. We still are able to maintain that currently. But it's like, yes, the school's open, but there's, more to the picture than that too.
The teachers union makes it as part of their sort of check-in with legislators that want their endorsement. They ask us to sort of do a shadow day and then come talk to them about how things are going. So you end up spending like a day following a teacher and then coming to a late afternoon, evening thing where you have some check-in and some discussion. And they have talked about, it was good to hear from academic professionals in my area of the world that unlike what you hear about in the suburbs or more rural areas, students are fine to wear masks. It's not a thing. Maybe they don't like it, right? But like, there's not like, they're not protesting it the way that you get the sense that that's going on in some other parts of our state. But they said the staffing has been very challenging. And they have, we've heard a lot from education staff about, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to describe this properly, the sort of challenging social emotional stuff that they're experiencing from their students. And maybe, if they've got kids at home too. And, I joked periodically with a couple of teachers and friends of mine, which is like, if my husband and I had to drag our kids through high school across Zoom, I'm not sure we'd be still married, like it just, it's like, I mean, my kids were okay students. They weren't bad. They went to school, they paid attention. They didn't give the teacher, trouble but like, they were not motivated learners. And if I had to do it where I had to be on them while I'm trying to work, like you got to be on screen, I think, it would have been hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even now, my daughter's not a big fan of her classes at community college online. It's not her favorite.
Yeah.
I have one more question. Rob, given your area in healthcare, that's your expertise.
Yes.
I'm curious if you're hearing anything about vaccine requirements at all in the state of Oregon coming from the state level.
So we have done vaccine requirements like in healthcare settings. Did we mandate them in education settings? This is embarrassing. I don't know that. For sure, that was and the governor, required it for the state workforce, but it's kind of a patchwork. There's no mandate from the state of Oregon. There's not going to be a bill that says everybody must get vaccinated. I don't think that could pass, to be totally honest with you. I mean, that would be 2019 we tried to do some updating to our vaccination laws in this state around childhood immunizations. We were able to pass that bill in my chamber, but we couldn't get it through the Senate. There was a walkout at that time as well over that bill. Now it was just a day walkout. And so the Senate president agreed to pull the bill. Blanket vaccine mandates are, I think, probably not in the making at this time.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I just think at a local level, it puts a lot of pressure on our school board and our superintendent to take up this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
so-
I have periodically heard from business owners who could you require something, and then the minute you start to talk about that, you get into this vaccine passport space really fast. And then the conversation just starts to break down. It's really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Go ahead.
I'm curious, has there been much of an investment or thought in dealing with the learning loss that's going on? I know there's a lot of students that are behind, my child included, and a lot of components just because they were on Zoom all last year. And
yes.
there's issues now even.
So this is where not being on the education committee, I'm going to be a little bit of loss. Yes, there is a lot of discussion about that, but I do not feel like there's been any consensus about how to handle it. So like, I think for a hot minute, there was going to be this whole thing about we're going to mandate summer school, and people came unglued. So that went away really fast for a whole host of reasons. People came unglued. And then I think there's conversation about, again, happening around, do we really need to have such a long summer break? Like maybe we need to have the breaks that we have, but maybe we could have a longer Christmas holiday break and a slightly longer spring break and a shorter summer break, because most of us are not doing agrarian work. You know, we don't need to be off out of school for the long summer, you know. And I think that is coming around, you know, that's sort of coming up a little bit. And we know that the money that came from the federal government is permitted to be used for all sorts of enrichment or catch up or tutoring or whatever, you know, you want to use, but requiring it, not so much. But we'll see. I mean, like, you know, like there's pressure to relax on testing. But I suspect all of that will show up in the long 2023 session as opposed to in the next 5 weeks.
Thank you.
Do you have thought? What do you think? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I think if there's an opportunity to put together some sorry, my kids in the background. If there's an opportunity to put together some sort of after school program that focuses on like some sort of tutoring level, because I know it's, you know, language arts and math are the big
Right.
impacts. I mean, everything's getting impacted, right? The library is not having access, you know, there's music programs are being cut, all kinds of things are being cut in funding. But I think there is some sort of opportunity, especially when you think of equity of education.
Yeah.
Some folks can get their kids private tutors. Some folks have an opportunity to have parents, you know, have different levels of privilege. So I think there is a huge opportunity to make an impact in the after school space.
Okay.
And I think that's where we could start to level it out a little bit better.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I know last year, as part of our budget process, we released like a bunch of money to give to nonprofits and school-based organizations to try to have enrichment programs over the summer. It may be that that's a thing that's coming as well, and I just haven't heard about it because I'm not in that budget space. I'm in human services and healthcare and behavioral health. So I'll try to check in and see if anything's planned in that way.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I just think there is an equity problem because there's so many schools with different after school programs. So they all have different things set up, which is great. But at the same time, then there's swaths of students missing out.
So I do know that work is being done to try to get our childcare situation in the state to improve. Because that's one of the industries that took a big hit during the pandemic. Yeah. It was not great before, but it's really struggled. And, you know, if we're going to get people, you know, back to work and keep women in the workforce, you know, we're going to have a much better preschool childcare situation than I think most of us experience.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. I mean, I think there's so many, it plays such a key role in so many aspects of people's lives. There's the educational aspect, obviously, there's the workforce aspect, there's just family finances. You know, childcare is ridiculously expensive for many people.
This is where, you know, the whole collapse of the Build Back Better stuff that Biden was trying to do with Congress is really unfortunate, because there were tons of things in that sort of approach that will help with childcare in schools and paying people that do service-oriented jobs like behavioral health and mental health, better. We'll see if some of those things come back, but it's pretty unfortunate that collapsed.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in early childhood education for a long time, and that industry has been taxed, and the educators that do that have not gotten paid what they deserve. But then at the same time, families can't afford, to pay.
Right.
So more like a universal preschool kind of focus.
That was
is
a
the best.
really popular component of that bill, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I would say to kind of circle back to the after school, I think it makes sense, but also for the little kids, like first, second, sometimes they're so burnt out after school to try and do real hard, like more academic stuff can be tricky. But
Sure.
I was looking around at other programs, like some schools have parent volunteers come in and just read one-on-one on students.
Yeah, or do arts and crafts, or play with Play-Doh, or go outside and kick, but just some organized activity. It doesn't all have to be.
Yeah. There's definitely after school fun, but I think that reading piece, if it's volunteers or hiring more specialists, but even if it's just volunteers, just one-on-one readers who are having a hard time, I think that's something that could be done. A push could be made. And I don't know if you can do anything about this, but I know I stayed home with my kids after I had them. It just made financial sense. I wish there could be some sort of program for people like me, like hire someone, like a woman with a gap in their work schedule, like, kind of like, let's give these people a chance who were taking care of kids and want to reenter course. That's my push.
Right on.
I have a question.
Okay, this is good. Everyone's kind of perking up here now. We're getting. I have to be off the Zoom at a little before 8.
Okay, so my question is that as a parent or guardian who cares about advocating for public education funding in Oregon, and if you don't have a representative or a senator that's on the education committee, what are our best routes for that? And I understand that we're in a really difficult pandemic and there's so many challenges, but even pre-pandemic, there's been such a disinvestment in public education. And what is the best route for us to advocate for that?
Well, I mean, the way education is funded in the state of Oregon, it's a mix of property taxes and income taxes, right? And now this new gross receipts tax that we passed in 2019 that started being collected in 2020. And so, the property tax system is very hard to reform. Unfortunately, it's a complicated juggernaut, and it's tied up in our Constitution. And unfortunately, your school board, because of the way our property tax system works, doesn't have the ability to sort of raise revenue the way that it used to. So you're sort of stuck for education funding to get better. You're stuck sort of advocating with people like me and your state senator and our governor. I mean, like it's the state legislature that really gets schools better funded and sets a lot of funding policy. The board, allocates resources, figures out how to pay people, figures out the classroom schedule, a lot of that stuff. But the funding really is a state government responsibility.
I really appreciate that. And I just want to mention, I saw in the chat that someone mentioned going to the school board. And for me, the experience has been you go to the school board and they say, well, our hands are tied because of our budget. So that's why, so I appreciate you mentioning that. I guess the question is, if then, are the people who represent us are not on that education committee, is our best route then to go and try to reach out to the people on the education committee? I know that there's
it's funny.
There's a senator who represents part of PPS is on that committee. Like, is that the best route? Like,
That's a really good question. The Oregon legislature is really committee dominated. We do not amend bills on the floor of either chamber. Like, you have to get your idea through the policy committee or the budget committee. And I sometimes lament, but I have constituents that are very passionate about ODOT and about transportation or about criminal justice. And I'm not as smart about that as I am about funding the Oregon Health Plan, about improving the behavioral health and the mental health system, because I'm not in those committees. It's kind of like having a major in college, you know, and like my major was taxes. But the last couple of sessions, it's been the Oregon Health Plan and Medicaid. And so, you know, like you can reach out to me, but if you've got a really specific idea, you know, maybe you try to cultivate a relationship with a Portland educator that's also on the education policy committee. But it is my job, you know, like I have to vote on everything. So if you've got a specific thing, you know, maybe you should just email me and we should make a special meeting and I can try to help you out and get it navigated. There's a constituent who she's got a really interesting idea for a reading program. And she, you know, she's probably going to end at the end of the day, probably work with me to get a bill introduced if she can't get somebody in one of these education groups to do it.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, JC. Kim, I'm gonna let's have you have the last question or comment.
Yeah, just when you mentioned the Oregon Health Plan, I wonder if, I don't know if this falls under your committees, but some sort of outreach between health and education where maybe counselors are coming to the schools and talking to kids and just kind of saying like, this is a weird time, I bet.
Yeah,
like, how
so there's supposed to be more counseling and mental health resource in schools because of the Student Success Act that we passed in 2019. And so if that tax is not sort of rolling through and collecting the way that we had planned, that could be part of it. I will also tell you that all of the mental health programs and providers and organizations in this state that do that work, they are all struggling to retain a workforce. So it's funny, I had thought I'd heard anecdotally that some of the folks that say like used to work at a Cascadia or a LifeWorks or did stuff at CODA, which is a drug and alcohol outreach program that's based on Burnside. We're taking jobs in schools, not necessarily because adolescent mental health is easier, but it is a narrower range of issues. You have summers off, you know, you're not working on the weekends, you're not on call. And we had heard anecdotally that as those kinds of positions came online, you have to have a master's degree to do mental health and counseling work. They were gravitating toward the school system, but then I could swear I've had other academics and teachers say, we don't think so, we're not seeing it. So I don't know. We are really struggling to get all kinds of positions all across our economy, particularly in the healthcare space, broadly defined, filled. And, you know, in the nursing home space and in the intellectual and developmental disability space, the work is just not paid very well. It's kind of like also working in childcare. It's just not paid very well. And so that's part of our challenge. Like people are not going back to jobs that don't pay very well. Meanwhile, to work in mental health or behavioral health, you almost always have to have a master's. And so, you know, if you went to undergrad, then you go to grad school to get a master's, and you graduate with that debt, and then you're lucky to make, you know, $50,000 a year.
No, for sure. I went to grad school. I got a master's. I know about debt, but almost like a PSA announcement or something that was just like, I don't know how it reached the kids, but just to know that like these are strange times. We know it. Just, I don't know how that would work, but like
I know that kind of stuff exists more in the middle schools and for sure in the high schools. Like the mental health and counseling systems that I know that exist. Like we're lucky that Multnomah County runs a series of clinics, and most of the high schools have that, and they're co-located with mental health people as well as straight up nurse practitioners who do physical health and sexual disease training and education and all that sort of stuff. It might not be as prevalent in the grade schools.
Yeah, I know the teachers are doing a good job, and I'm sure you have to go. It's just such a hard time to be in school without kind of a lot of the like fun stuff. It's just the it's just everything's weird.
Yeah. I want to thank Representative Nosse for being here today, and
Yeah, I
everybody
appreciate
else
you guys
for-
you gave me a lot of time, actually. I don't have kids in school right now, though I've got grandkids who I think will, in 2 more years, will be kindergartners and first graders. So I'll be back, sort of paying more close attention to what's going on because I'll be living it for a change. I've had like a 4-year reprieve. Both my kids graduated from Franklin.
All right.
And my son decided college is not for him, but my daughter's while she's raising her kids, she's doing some community college and eventually wants to get into some sort of social work. So
well, thanks again for being here tonight.
yeah, it was nice to meet all of you. Thanks for taking some time to be involved in this and pay attention. And JC, if you've got some sort of specific idea that you want looked into, it might be that I might not be the best person to help you advocate for it, but like I would probably be your start person.
Great. I'm going to ask, Rob, if you need to jump off, please do. I'm going to everybody else just to hold on 1 more minute before we do so. But
right.
Thanks again. Really
It's
appreciate
nice
it.
to meet all of you. Thank you very much for giving me some time.
Thanks everyone for being here tonight. Does anyone want to offer a reflection or say anything about what they heard to the group? Or want to suggest a follow-up on something that you heard?
Not really a reflection, but just want to encourage everyone who, if you're here tonight and have ideas at the PTA, we definitely want to hear them and listen and figure out how to make them happen. And I think we're all really passionate about it also. So JC, if you want to come or even email the PTA, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? One thing I wanted to ask, but we ran out of time there, was I know that Rob last year was actually pushing a reform of the way that property taxes work in this state, and I don't think it didn't go anywhere or didn't get passed. But I kind of wanted to ask him whether that connected at all to the way that school funding works. But anyways, okay. Not seeing any other comments. I'll just want to. Kim, that was perfect segue. I'm glad we coordinated that before the meeting. If you are interested in staying involved, the Constella once again has all the updates on things that are going on. It will once again, you can add that to your digital calendar, and you can it'll automatically push things to you, so you don't need to necessarily check it all the time. Always, if you have any comments or concerns, groutpta@gmail.com, and there's a Facebook as well as Instagram. And also, if you are interested in any of those, in becoming a member of the board, I should just mention to everybody, not every position is a heavy lift. I am the movie night coordinator, which there has been no movie nights. Not because I wouldn't do them, but because of obvious reasons that you can all. So there are other things, if you like one-off thing, or like, smaller tasks, if you want, just going to get involved, please do. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and the last thing I just want to do, if folks had a chance to look at the meeting notes, I did put them back in the chat again from last meeting, just to